Mayor Suarez, thank you for coming by.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, bro.
Thank you.
This is the coolest studio I've ever been in, right here on the water, Coconut Grove.
It's nice. Unfortunately, your audience can't see the outside.
Yeah.
But I think it's arguing. I mean, look, I was president of all the mayors in the U.S. for about a year and a half, and I got to see a lot of city halls. And I think this is arguably the nicest one. You know, obviously, this is a historic building. When you leave the building, you see that there are actually hangars that are preserved, and those are the hangars where the seaplanes actually sat in the hangars and they would get rolled out. There's pictures all over the building. So I'd recommend to your listeners, viewers, come by and check out City Hall. I mean, we have tourists that come all the time.
Really?
And it's funny because I walk in the building and they're there and I'm like, hey, I'm the mayor and
Take
whatever.
pictures?
Yeah. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And we heard you're a big Miami Hurricanes fan as well.
I'm a big Canes fan.
So these two guys played at Miami.
What years?
I graduated 2022.
Okay.
Yeah, so I just got done. I was
a few years ago.
Underneath Manny Diaz, and Coach Cristobal.
Nice.
So,
Yeah. So I was a part of like the whole era of like Coach Rick. So I came in 2017. I graduated 2020. Committed under Coach Golden though.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've seen it all.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. My dad was mayor from 1985 to 1993. So they won 3 national championships. When my dad was the mayor. All the wide rights and all that from those FSU games and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's how I grew up. And then, I've been mayor since 2017, and I keep telling all the coaches, I'm like, yo, you guys got to win a championship. You're down 3. Actually, Mayor Diaz's dad, I'm not sure if he was mayor yet when they won the first national championship. Not the first one, the one in 01. So he was elected in 01, but I'm not sure if he was elected at the end of 01, so that might have been the beginning. I'm not sure, but anyways, so he might have one, so I'm like, you gotta get at least one. And look, Cristobal's had 2 great recruiting classes. Depending on what site you believe, he's like the 8th or the 5th or 4th or 3rd.
I think this year's number 3.
Number 3. Some of the highest ones are number 3. Yeah. It's just such a crazy time now because with the portal.
And
NIL. Right, you got these 2 phenomenon that make you wonder. Even if you have before you had a solid class, if you stack 2 solid classes like that, you're like, okay, we're gonna have guys here for 2-3 years. I'm good, right? But theoretically, anyone can transfer.
Anyone can poach.
It's crazy. So you see that happening, and then you see teams that get better fast. And it's not that they're having great recruiting classes; it's that they're having great transfer portal classes.
Yeah,
right.
Transfer portal.
So the guy who now is running the NCAA is former governor of Massachusetts, Charlie Baker. I don't know if you guys.
I didn't know that. Fun fact.
So fun fact, and he's a good guy, but he sort of inherited all this, So I don't know how he's feeling about.
It's the Wild Wild West. I feel like the rules are being changed literally every day. We're kind of like making it up as we go. I heard the other day some kid from like Oklahoma got like $800K out of high school.
Yeah.
Guys are getting way more than quarterbacks are getting over 10 mil.
I think the issue also is obviously. These kids are, and you guys as well, right? Like you're risking your health, right? Because, football's a pretty violent sport. Yeah. The university are making a lot of money off their programs. And, so we also want kids to get an education. So what happens is I would imagine we don't want kids to leave school early to go professional if they can, still
make
take
more,
care, right? They can, or at least maybe not more, but at least they can take care of themselves or family, whatever, do it legally. Yeah. So that there's no issues related to someone breaking the rules. I don't know. It's, maybe not a perfect system, but it sounds like it's probably a better system
than before.
Than
I spent this past year on the practice squad. I can tell you they're making more.
They're making more.
I wish I had a couple more years of eligibility.
You're on that. You're on the pro side.
To make that.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, look, you see guys coming back, which is interesting for the 5th year or 4th year. Right, to
6th
get a
year,
big
7th, sometimes 8, 9.
Even 4th or 5th year, they're coming back. We got the quarterback transfer, Cam Ward. I think he's a 5th year senior or 4th year senior.
Yeah.
Right, so that maybe would have been somebody you would have lost to the NFL, and the person does well, gets to play, develop even more, and then hopefully become a high draft pick or whatever.
Yeah. And what do you think about Coach Cristobal? Have you talked to him?
I have. I think he's phenomenal. He's a Miami guy, player, national champion. High school guy. He went to Columbus.
Did you go to Columbus as well?
I didn't. I graduated from LaSalle,
Okay.
I went briefly to Columbus in 9th grade. That's another story. But
got kicked out?
No, I did not get kicked out. But it's another story.
Mayor Suarez kicked out of middle school.
I'm sure that'll get the blogs going. But no, it was. But he's a Columbus guy. I like the fact that he's an offensive lineman, former offensive lineman.
He's building the trenches for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like he got these two guys last year that were the number one, number two offensive linemen in the country. Right. And if you're now a running back, if you're a receiver, if you're a quarterback, now you're thinking to yourself, wait a second, I'm going to have more time. I'm going to have more holes. You know what I mean? I'm going to be able to get open as a receiver. And so people don't realize that. They're thinking skill positions first, which makes sense because that's what's flashy and fun. But if you don't have the time, right? Yeah. If you can't block people, you're not going to get open. You can't run the ball. You can't, So I think he's kind of an old school smash mouth guy.
Trust me, I know first.
And he just, but he's a great recruiter. I mean, what he's done is unbelievable. I was looking at all the recruiting rankings for the last 20 years, and even some of the ones that you talked about, some of the coaches that you guys have talked about. I mean, they to get a top 5 recruiting class. I mean, you're talking about like Georgia right now, Alabama, right? You're competing against all the big boys. So I have a lot of faith in him. He hasn't been afraid to change coaches if something's not working. And then so look, I hope being a Kane fan, right? And look, and I went to FIU, so I don't want to throw my FIU guys totally shade on there, but because I'll get the calls. Because I'll get the calls. I'll tell you, I'll get the calls from I'll get the calls from the.
But you like Miami more, like football.
Yeah. I mean, they haven't really been in. Again, I'll get in trouble for saying this, but they have 5 national championships, right? In D1, right? So
it's the premier school.
So it's.
And do you think they'll come back to what they were in like 80s, early 2000s?
I do, and I actually think we're seeing now these coaches leave, right? Like Saban, and some of these other coaches that there's an opportunity, right, with coaches retiring. So everything always changes, like it's evolving. Like you're seeing now, there was a time when even the big 3, UF, FSU, and UM were not even the most prominent in the state. Right? You had UCF making waves, and you had some of these other schools. But no, I do. I think. Listen, as a Kings fan, you're always optimistic.
Yeah, you have the first.
Every year,
they're back.
Every year, it's gonna be right here.
They're back. But no,
he's back.
But listen, Mario. I think they did a few things. They're doing a few things different. Number one is, they got a guy who's they got a marquee coach, right, for a hometown guy from Oregon, right, who's coaching at Oregon, a big program, and then they're investing in the program. I think that's the big issue, and I think these recruiting rankings don't happen by accident. You know what I mean? They're obviously investing.
Yeah. Great coach, great guy. I only had the privilege to play knee for him for only a year, but he was definitely a great guy, great mentor, and great leader. So I'm excited. Listen, I seen the way the program.
He's a great man. He's a great father. I see him at church. I love seeing him. Mass and St. Augustine, and so I think I have a good relationship with him, and we're able to talk every once in a while. He's a great guy.
And for NFL, you like the Dolphins? Is that your team?
Of course. Yeah, look, I mean, I was born and raised in Miami. I'm the first mayor of Miami. We were incorporated in 1896, right? And as far as we can tell, I was the first mayor of Miami born in the city of Miami, in the history of Miami. That's huge. Wow. First father and son. My dad was mayor from 85 to 93. My dad was the first Cuban mayor. And so I grew up, I remember the 1985 Bears against Dolphins game when the Bears were undefeated and Marino beat them in the Orange Bowl to break their undefeated streak. They never lost a game after that, by the way. The Bears, 1985 Bears was arguably one of the best teams in history with Walter Payton.
The Fridge,
Dent.
So he played
Richard
Chicago
Dent.
last year.
Yeah. So they had McMahon was the quarterback. I mean, they had a great team, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl that year, and they dominated the Patriots. And the only game that they lost was against the Dolphins, and keep the perfect season intact. So, there's just a lot of tradition there. I think the owner is doing a good job. I think the coach is phenomenal. He's built a team around the talent of the team, right? Like I think he's been able to maximize Tua by playing to Tua's strengths, getting the assets that they need to maximize it. And if I would have told you when they drafted Tua, hey, a couple years later he's going to be lead the NFL in passing yards, 4,600, almost 5,000 passing yards.
Tua did that this year?
4,600 passing yards.
I might need to see the stats on that.
Brother. Hey, throw the challenge flag. Throw the challenge flag. I bet you that he threw for more than 4,600 yards this year.
This year.
Challenge flag. You throw a challenge flag on that?
Actually, I believe you because
I'm saying with so much conviction.
No, because I believe because Tyreek Hill almost had what?
1,700 yards.
So I was like, okay,
he had 1,700. Waddle had over 1,000 yards.
Yeah. Okay, so you know what? I believe
2 + 2 is 4.
this time. I believe
This guy Devon over here, he's a hard sell, man.
Hey,
he also believes that
while you guys are talking,
I'm
going to Google it. Just
than Tyreek Hill.
I think he for sure led the league in passing.
Oh, yeah.
The question is, do you
He did leave the
The question is, do you pay him top 3 quarterback money off of that? Because always I'm a fan of Tua personally, but the naysayers always say like big moments doesn't come in.
I'm not gonna I'm not gonna get into that piece of it because I don't want to. I mean, it's the Dolphins. They got to negotiate and Tua and all that. I think McDaniels has done a phenomenal job of getting the most out of him.
Oh yeah.
B, I think there was some he was injured, right? He was injured out of college with the hip injury, and missed a couple games in I think his first couple seasons, and so he had his first season also where he didn't miss a game. I thought that was a big deal. Yeah. And it's the nature of the way the NFL is, right? He's on the end. I think it was the last year of his rookie contract where they extended him a year, so he's going to have to, they're going to have to make a decision as to whether or not they keep him, they pay him this year or they extend him or what.
Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Yeah. 46-24.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
4,624 yards, man.
Okay.
Stats down.
Yeah. Okay. He knows his stats. Okay.
Yeah.
Big football guy. I respect it.
He's the PR department for the
Go to
Dolphins.
basketball too if you want to.
Miami Heat fan? I'm guessing.
Actually, Miami Heat, I have a great story with Miami Heat. Miami Heat was incorporated or began in 1988-89 season. My dad was the mayor, so that guy that's holding me up right there in that picture was the mayor of Miami at the time. So he helped bring when he was mayor the Heat, the Panthers, and also the Marlins.
Oh wow!
So he beat me on that. He beat me on that
all
too.
them here.
Well, my thing was I focused on Inter Miami, right? Bringing Inter Miami to Miami and doing the stadium deal, which we did in the city, which was a great deal for the citizens of Miami. They approved it as well, by 65%. And then the team made me look good and smart by going out and getting Messi and Luis Suarez and Jordi Alba.
Did you play a role in getting them here as well?
Well, they were here, so I played a role. So I played a role. Yeah. So the answer is yes. In a sense, I played a role in the stadium deal. So I was the lead negotiator for the city with my city manager, right, on the stadium deal, and I presented it to the commission, and it was a great deal. I would argue it was the best sports deal in the history of sports, and I know that's a big statement, but I can tell you that, for example, right now in Tennessee, the Titans are asking for over $1 billion from Tennessee. In Buffalo, Buffalo's asking the state of New York for over $1 billion in subsidies for the stadium. Wow. In Las Vegas is asking Nevada for over $1 billion for their stadium. In Miami, we gave $0.
Really?
They're paying us fair market value rent for the land that they're building it on. So we're going to make conservatively and over the life of at least $2 billion in revenue. Wow. So we went from a deal where you're giving $1 billion to you're making $2 billion. Wow. Big difference. And then, of course, they make us look good by going out there and getting these incredible players and, which builds our brand and our assets, et cetera. So it's, so I had a big role in that. And also tried to play a significant role in us becoming the headquarters for the 2026 World Cup. Mm-hmm. That's also, and I was a president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors when the U.S. was awarded the World Cup, and it was actually Canada, the U.S., and Mexico that were awarded the World Cup. So been trying to get involved in that because I think that these are worldwide events that really enhance our brand and, and they create prosperity. I mean, look, I don't think it's a secret that we have, or I don't think that it's by accident that we have the lowest unemployment in America, highest wage growth in America. The city's grown in terms of the value of its property by 100% since I've been here. And we have the lowest homicide rate in our recorded history. Wow. So those are stats that are meaningful because they impact real people's lives.
The other thing I'll bring up too is homelessness is way down. And I know because, like Rob and I, we started this nonprofit called Second Spoon. And so we started it down here when I was in college. Yeah. And basically we take all the surplus foods and we donate it and we feed the homeless. We have a food truck. And when did we start? Like 2016, 17, like probably when you first
Thank
started.
you for doing that, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate it.
This would have been 2018.
Yeah, I started in 2017.
This was after my freshman year.
Yeah, so around that time. Yeah. And I mean, there was a good amount of homeless people, nothing like out in California or LA, because we work out there as well, like Skid Row and all that. Yeah. But recently, we went out a few months ago. It was like almost hard to find people, which is like good, right?
So we put out a plan. I was inspired a few years ago when we had reached something called functional zero veteran homeless, meaning we had basically eradicated homeless veterans from our city. And that was certified by the federal government. And so I was like, well, how many do we have total? And according to our census, currently we have somewhere in the 500 range, 500
Just
total.
veterans or total homeless?
Total.
Really?
Total.
In all of Miami?
Total. And all of the city of Miami proper. Now, some people think of Miami as the county, right? The county is a 3 million metropolitan area, places like Kendall and Doral, that's outside of the city. That's about 1,000. So it's not that much bigger.
Not at all.
Right? And you're talking about, in terms of population, you're talking about, we're about 1/6 approximately of the population of the county, with about 500,000. The county's about 3 million, right? So that's the proportion. But we have about half the homeless because we're the urban area, right? We're the center. And so we want to be at zero. Like I put out a plan called Functional Zero. In fact, I just did my State of the City a few days ago at Camilla's house, which is one of the homeless shelters.
That's where we give out food. Exactly. Like right outside there on the street.
Yeah. And we think that our community, and thanks to people like you, displays extreme compassion. And I think we can get there. We can take care of 530 people. We can house them. We can help them vocationally learn how to be productive for themselves, get skills, whether it's I sponsored a culinary institute to teach the homeless how to be cooks and chefs for our hotel system. I also taught them a construction management program so they can be OSHA certified, so they can actually work on construction sites. So we're not just about them, potentially getting mental health counseling and drug addiction, counseling. It's also about helping them integrate. And what we've noticed is that Camilla's, for example, has an incredible statistic. 99% of the people that are housed, 99%, remain housed. Like, don't go back. Right. So we know that if we can just create enough capacity, we have a model that will work. Wow. Yeah, man. It's good stuff.
I think the mayor of LA needs to contact
take some notes.
Like Skid Row is,
brother, I can
the
tell
last
you,
estimate was 30,000 people.
I've gotten so many calls from so many people telling me things like that. Yeah. Part of the reason why I ran for president was because of that. But it wasn't always like this in this community. We had about 10,000 homeless, and we created something called the Homeless Trust, which is based on a food and beverage tax. When you buy it in our city, you get a 1% tax on your food and beverage, and that generates a ton of money. And we use that to do a decentralized set of homeless assistance centers throughout the community. And we care. We're compassionate. We believe that we're judged, all of us, and I think that's why you guys went out there, by what we do for those that are most in need in our community. And I think that's a measure of a city, the compassion of a city.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Thanks, bro.
It feels like when you're the mayor, there's so many hats that you have to wear. How do you go about like prioritizing the objectives? Like what needs to get accomplished?
I think first you're driven by your passion. What are you passionate about at the moment? Or what is the issue of the moment, right? Like we focused my State of the City on what I call the 3 H's: homeless, housing, and homicides. So again, we wanted to build on our record low homicide rate. 1947, we started recording homicides. We had about 176,000 people, and we had 32 homicides. This year, we have over 500,000, and we had 31.
Wow.
And by the way, the high water mark at the year we had the most was in 1980. We had 220. So it's not like, Miami's just been flat. Right? We were up at 220. And
that was because of like the drug trade and all that cocaine?
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, I don't know if have you guys seen Griselda, the Netflix documentary?
Of course.
So
that took place in Hialeah, Miami Lakes, right?
Well, it happened all over Miami. I don't want to throw shit on Hialeah. I'm going to get a call from the mayor of Hialeah. Why are you throwing my city under the bus? So, no, man, a lot of it happened in our city, in Miami.
For sure. Dayland Mall.
Dayland's outside of the city, but we had in 1980, we had 220 murders. That is 2 out of every 3 days we had a murder.
Whoa.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so, now we had 31, which is, less than 3 a month. We had 2 out of every 3 days, right? Less than 3 a month. So it's less than 1 a week. So it's a significant improvement. And So that's that. Housing, obviously, we are a city that everybody wants to live in. Yeah. Like we're the envy of the world right now. So that creates demand, right? Like people want to be here and that increases prices. Yeah. So we want to make Miami affordable. It's tough because I'm not going to do things to stop demand, right? Like I'm not going to say, okay, we're going to raise taxes. We're going to make the city less safe or we're going to make it, whatever to make it less desirable, right? So that's demand. Yeah. But what you can do is you can use the resources you have, leverage them, which we've done to the tune of 20 to 1 to create affordable housing and give people an opportunity to live in pride. And I think part of the reason why we've seen a drop in homicides is because we had food deserts in the city and we invested in supermarkets to bring in supermarket chains. We invested in a lot of affordable housing over my time as a public official, 15 years. And that creates an ecosystem, right? So that people are not on the streets, they're home. They have, these buildings that are affordable housing. They have, community centers, they have workout rooms, they have, TV rooms where you can watch a game, where you can work out, where you can, computer rooms where you can, by the way, nowadays everything's computerized. So like if you want to apply for a job, you gotta have a computer.
You need the internet. Yeah.
You need the internet. So, we have, again, the lowest unemployment in America, 1.6% unemployment. That means 98.4% of our citizens are working. And we were also ranked the happiest city in America and the healthiest city in America. So I always say, like, if you're happy, you're healthy, and you're working, you're not committing crime. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like pretty straightforward, basic stuff.
It's because of 11 right there.
Right. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. Never heard of that place.
No idea. No, so you mentioned running for president in this primary. I'm curious, what is something that you learned about that process that you didn't know before? Because I'm curious as kind of like the behind the scenes,
I learned a lot.
The bureaucracy, maybe like some sort of like deep state where they're trying to propel.
You want to get me in trouble, huh?
No, I'm curious.
So what did I learn? I learned a lot of things.
Yeah.
A lot of things. I think the first thing I learned is that the process to select a president is a process where the people who are part of that process, right, are incredible people. They're Americans, right? And we as Americans are incredible people. We don't give ourselves enough credit, I think, sometimes, right? And these are people who understand the gravity of what they're basically doing, right? And they have high IQs, and they're not necessarily wealthy people, right? So this is not like, these are not, the people that are in the early, and I'm talking about the early primary states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, right? Like these are people that are not necessarily wealthy people, but they're smart people. They love this country. They're quintessential Americans. And that I learned through meeting them and going through the process. Obviously, like everything in life, there are, yes, when you talk about the deep state, I would maybe characterize it a little bit differently. Like everybody, there's a lot of interest. Right? There's a lot of interest. Yeah. And the interest may not be having a young Hispanic Republican mayor, necessarily.
Is it because it's hard to get a minority through the Republican caucus because of all those maybe Midwest states?
No, I think, look, first of all, a mayor has never been the president. It's never happened. You've never had a mayor go directly from the mayor. By the way, that happens a lot across the world. In other countries, in Argentina and Great Britain, and like in a bunch of countries, pretty much every country in the world other than the U.S.
Really?
Yeah. The mayor of Buenos Aires is often a presidential candidate. The mayor of Bogotá is often a presidential candidate. The mayor of London was, Boris Johnson was the mayor of London, right? So he was a prime minister. So it happens a lot across the world, just doesn't happen a lot in the U.S. So I think that was one. I think. So you don't have the same volume, right? You're not giving and then I think also the fact that the governor ran and we're both from the same state, we cannibalize each other a little bit. Like who's the one that's responsible for the success? And so I think there was a little bit of that. And obviously he's a governor, so and he had more money than I did, so he's obviously going to get more volume. That's just kind of like math, right? So I don't think it's anything. I think the Republican Party would love to have someone that looks like me and sounds like me advancing, right, in the process, because if Republicans can get Hispanics, if Republicans can get young voters, and if Republicans can get people in cities, three areas they traditionally do not do well in,
right?
They could do very, very well in elections.
Because you would bring in that demographic.
That's what I would. That's what I would try to bring in. Yeah, that would be my objective, right? Yeah.
So how does it like the day you decide, like I'm posting, I'm announcing, I'm running? Yeah. Is it like just a bunch of different like corporations and like as you said, like special interest groups are coming up to you?
No. So first of all, the process of deciding to run for president is it's a long and deliberative and arduous process, right? You are, and it sometimes doesn't hit you until like you're middle of
when you're in it. You're like, wow, I'm doing it.
Yeah, like, oh my God, this is like you're
running for in Iowa, eating a corn dog. You're like,
yeah, I know. And I'll tell you, there was a moment, and I remember the moment well. My mom called me. My mom just checking up on me, like, hey, how you doing? Like, how's it going? And it just dawned on me, like, sometimes you're so, and I'm sure from your football world, you can relate to this, right? You're so focused on executing the play, on executing, the practice, and having a good practice, but you're just looking at what's right in front of you, right? Whether it's the drill or whatever. And sometimes you don't zoom out and think about like your career, where am I, what do I want to achieve, that kind of stuff. And at that moment, I zoomed out, and I'm like, oh my God, I am running for the most important job in the world. Literally. Yeah. And I'm one of 12 people. Yeah. On my side of the ledger.
Top 12.
I'm top 12, right? And so it dawns on you, and then you realize the enormity of it. There are, obviously it's the most important job in the world, at least right now, being the president of the United States. And so it's a lot of responsibility.
So my question to you is, would you do it again?
I would under the right circumstances, I think. So it reminds me of, and again, this is I'm sure I'll get criticized for using this as an example, but you get criticized for everything, so par for the course. I ran for mayor in 2013, and so I was trying to push the generational envelope in the city. I ran against an incumbent. I ran against a guy who was my dad's generation. So I wanted to be the first in my generation mayor, which I ended up being, but I ended up being 4 years later. And so what happened is I ran, I did well, made a couple mistakes in the campaign, and it became harder for me to win, and I ended up dropping out because my wife was pregnant. We were trying to get pregnant for 4 years, and we finally did. I found out on Father's Day, actually, of that year, and which was pretty cool. And then that's my 9-year-old son, and he's a basketball player, and then I decided to get out, and it made it a lot easier for me when I ran in 17. So what I'm trying to say is,
you learn from that experience.
Yes, there is a learning curve. You do have to your point, you have to meet people in the process. You have to understand the process. Some people win the first time, but not everybody does, and a lot of people don't. Current presidents run multiple times.
I think Biden ran like 3-4 times.
Yeah.
So what do you make of looking ahead? Trump probably going to beat Nikki, but what do you think about that coming up in South Carolina? Also against Biden.
I think it's kind of a must-win for her. It's her home state. Yeah. She was the governor. She came in third in Iowa, and she declared it was going to be a 2-person race, which it turned out to be. So she was right about that.
After finishing third, though.
After finishing a distant third, right? Like a distant third, because both of them were distant, second and third. They were 30 points behind the former president. Then she did better in New Hampshire, but it was 10 points still. And that's the place where you would expect her to do well, right?
It's like her best state, yeah.
Right, you would think that she would do very well there. And I think there were some demographics that came out that 70% of the voters that voted for her were not Republican, potentially. So that's the question about whether there's a vulnerability there. But it is her home state. Presumably she knows how to win in her home state because she was the governor twice. Yeah. And so she's down, from what I hear, significantly in those polls as well. She's got about 20-something days to figure it out. And then, and then look, I think assuming that, one argument that she does make is she does seem to poll better against Biden, the former president, in general.
Yeah. Did you meet these candidates a lot?
I did.
Did you like Nikki?
I liked all of them. To be honest with you,
they're cool.
I like most of them.
Is that I can tell you who I think it is, and then you could either.
I'm in that position. I like most of them.
Just a wink.
I like most of them. I did talk to just about all of them.
Yeah. You guys are probably events and all that kind of stuff all together.
Yeah. At events. Yeah. Look, we're different, right? We're all very different people. We come from different perspectives, different points of we come from different parts of the country. We come from different upbringings, different whatever. We have a lot of things in common in terms of values. But it was. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's probably beef that comes up though. If I'm talking about another candidate, person XYZ, he's weak in this area. Like if you said something about me, I'd be like,
I would say this. I would say this. And you know, I want to be humble about this, right? Like, I think I might have gotten beef if I would have stayed in longer. Yeah. Right, like the fact that I got out so quickly probably avoided a lot of like potential beef. Yeah. I'll tell you that I had a candidate, I won't say who when I dropped out, and he meant this as a compliment. He's like, I was really glad you didn't make the debate stage because they were worried, right? Like they thought like, you know, having a guy that sounds like me, that has my background, has my story, and that can potentially be compelling, was not something they were looking forward to. On the stage. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we see you guys, we see candidates take jabs at each other on stage, but does that respectful banter like happen offline too? Is it in the DMs? Is it like calling each other?
I'll say this. It's not too different from sports. Okay. Right? Like it's your competitor. Yeah. Right? Like, do you really hate the other team, right? Sometimes you do.
That's you, yeah. I don't know.
Sometimes you do. Sometimes it is personal because of the history, right? And sometimes it gets so nasty that there's no turning back, right? But I think, you know, a lot of times, and I think, you know, if you're smart, you have some level of forgiveness, right? Like, there is, you know, sometimes the disrespect gets it gets a little out of control. Yeah. But if it stays within the realm of like, you know, not too crazy.
Sport and competitive.
Right. Look, you're competing, so you're gonna go at it. You're gonna go at it hard.
Healthy competition.
Right, and you're gonna go at each other. You know.
You don't take it personal.
Yeah. I mean, you try not to take it personal. Right.
I mean, that's
so that takes it personal.
Yeah. All right, next topic: the aliens that popped up in Miami.
Yeah, we got it.
Did you get to meet them? And if so, what did they tell you?
They told me they like Cuban coffee. No, man. No, listen. So this is interesting. I the aliens in Miami. I know
we were expecting that one. When you woke up this morning.
No. So where do I go with this? I'm sure I'm gonna upset some people by telling the truth here. As far as I know, there are no aliens in Miami. Okay. So there was a lot of police officers. You know, as a public official, you're always being recorded. I go have lunch and people are recording me. You know what I mean? Like where I have lunch. So it would be bewildering to me that some alien is walking down Biscayne Boulevard with 20, 30 cop cars, right? And nobody would whip out their phone and just hit the record button and record the alien. And by the way, I can assure you that the police was not called there because of an alien, right? Like, they were called out there because there was a fight, and I can tell you that that it's not the first time it's happened in Bayside during New Year's, right? Like, so this has been, unfortunately, something that's happened a couple of years successively.
Fights and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. These things, and then they create like mini stampedes. Apparently, what's happening was some of the kids were shooting the fireworks at people. So that created the little stampede action, and there were some fights that came out of it. So there was what's called I think it's called the Citywide 3, if I'm not mistaken, which is a call that goes out to all the police officers, which basically means everybody has to like drop everything they're doing, show up. Because if it's something that gets out of control, we gotta maintain order.
Well, that's why there's a conspiracy, because there was so many cop cars, and they made it seem like on TikTok.
But I heard everything, man. I even heard that there were rumors that they shut down the phones. And
oh, really? TikTok's crazy.
I sometimes think. I think to me the conspiracy is. I sometimes think that our enemies and our adversaries, I really believe this, are using our social media channels against us.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? When you think about, countries like Russia and Iran and like North Korea, and like, these guys have troll farms and they use AI and they understand that we sometimes we can be skeptical as human beings, right? And they figure out ways to manipulate us, to persuade us. And I think it hurts us sometimes because it creates animosity and it creates friction.
Yeah, that's that. Have you seen the Yuri Bezmenov guy, the Russian defector? So we had a CIA guy on the podcast. I asked him about it. So he was former KGB. Okay. And in like the 80s or 90s, he was like, he came to the U.S., defected, and like did a big interview and was like, hey, like this is our plan for the next few decades. Yeah. We're gonna like infiltrate. We're gonna start off in the academic setting, and then like do like all these Marxist teachings, which is kind of what's happening in the left, right? And then slowly, this was his quote, it was like, all it takes is one generation for everything to like go upside down.
Look, it's communism and socialism. My parents were kicked out of their country of birth, which was Cuba, right? And there, a charismatic leader said, give us all your property, give us all your businesses, and we'll make everybody equal. And he did. He made everybody equally poor and equally miserable, right? And so, you know, it doesn't work. It's never worked. I always say it's the easiest sell in politics because it's easy to tell somebody, hey man, you're down on your luck. I got the answer. I'm just gonna take more from that guy who's got a lot. I'm gonna give it to you. The problem is it creates a perverse incentive structure, right? If you're busting your butt and you're working hard and you're earning this stuff, you know what I mean? You have no incentive. I mean, you can be charitable, right? And you can give your money away and you can whatever, but the government taking it away to create this equality ends up creating a situation where then you have a disincentive to be productive because the more productive you are, you don't necessarily benefit from it. So you leave. And what happens is in Cuba is people left, right? You see what happening in these cities, right? They leave, they come here, which is why we have all this demand, by the way. But that's what's happened. And so, you know, when the people who have capital leave and they're productive, you don't have investment. When you don't have investment, you don't have growth. When you don't have growth, you know, things start to decay.
For sure.
So it's just a very, very, very repetitive sort of basic cycle. It's not even complicated, but it's always easy politically to pit, you know, to have class warfare. It's always an easy political thing to do.
I didn't realize how bad it was in Cuba. I have grandparents that are from there. And they would tell me, and like, I mean, they still communicate with like other family members that are there, and they're telling me like there's rations of eggs. You can only have like a certain 8 eggs like a month. I'm like, dude, I eat 4 or 5 in the morning. You know, that's insane. 8 a month, and even that's like lucky.
I think when people come in from Cuba, I think they go to a supermarket and they realize like, hey, wait a second, you can just
unlimited
buy anything here. And it's reasonably priced.
Insane.
But this is a country where you gotta work, man. This is a country where you gotta, you know, you have to work. Where your ingenuity, your work ethic, your education all influence your success. And your network, obviously. So, you know, it's a great country. There's no perfect country, right? But, you know, Winston Churchill used to say the democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others, meaning like we're still the best, right? It's a tough system of government because every day you have to convince people of the wisdom of your decision. Like as mayor, I won by 85%, I was reelected by 80%, and I still have a ton of people that criticize me. And so every day I gotta convince them, no man, I'm here to do my job. Let me, you know, give me a break. Let me do my job. I'm looking out for you. You know what I mean? And so it just happens. You know, it's the beauty of democracy, but it's also the difficulty of democracy.
Speaking of that, like, how do you deal with all the noise? You know what I mean? Like
the hateration.
Yeah, the hateration, the haters, the naysayers.
So you know, I think it's. I'm glad you asked the question. I've been asked it before on podcasts, and it's really an interesting question. I think first of all, you need to know who you are, and I think that I know it sounds easy, like that's kind of like silly, like how do we not know who we are? But like when you're tested, when people criticize you, trust me, you will have doubts. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that for me, I don't want to speak for anyone else, is driven by their spirituality. I'm deeply spiritual. I go to church on Sundays. I pray every day. You know, and I believe that faith is an enormous part of not just my ethic as a person, but my obligations as a citizen of this community, my obligations as a parent, as a husband. I'm not perfect. I don't claim to be perfect. I make mistakes like anybody else, but I'm always working on myself, and I'm always trying to be the best version of myself. Right, and you know, it's a work in progress, right? You're always working at it, right? You're trying to stay close to God, in my case, Jesus, because I think He set a great example, right? And you know, so that's how I get started. I think the second part is, you know, when you accomplish things, right, you start to build up a record that you can look back on and say, hey, this happened. You know, like they can't take this away from me. Like the stadium with Inter Miami. It's being built, it will be built, they will be playing there, and one day I will go there and say, I know that I had a big role in this. No, I mean not, but I'm saying I had a big role in it, and that's how I built this. Actually, I didn't build it. The private sector built it, right, at their cost, right? It didn't cost us any money. So that was part of the reason why it was a good deal. But I actually am glad that we didn't build it, right? I don't want it to be something that we have to now manage and that we now have to capitalize and spend money on. They did it at their cost, at their risk. So, but you accomplish things, you do things, and that also helps, that gives you confidence. Obviously, your voters give you confidence, right? Like when you are walking in the street and someone says, hey man, you're doing a great job, or hey, we appreciate you. I always say that we have a spiritual gas tank, right? And some days you're down, you feel tired, you feel like overwhelmed or beat up. And then other days somebody will say something nice to you and you'll be like, you'll be like, wow, you know what I mean? And that kind of like boosts you. And so we need that affirmation. That's important. Man, and at some level, you've got to protect yourself. I think would be the last thing I would tell you. Protect yourself. So I go on social media diets where like I will literally erase my social media from my phone for a couple of days and just be like, I need a break. I don't want to be looking at this. I don't want to be thinking about this. I need to focus on my family. I need to focus on my job. I need to focus on whatever. I can't obsess over this because, by the way, human nature, we can get 100 good comments. You get one bad comment, and
that's what I was about to say.
And it often will put you in a bad mood.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
It'll ruin your day right there.
It's crazy, and it's hard to get beyond that. And then you worry that if you get to a place where you don't care about anything, then you're like, what does that say about me, right? So you got to be.
Is it like kind of a happy medium? Because as a mayor, like you have constituents, so you do need to like listen to what they're saying. Because you can't just completely like if I'm a football player, it's like, dude, like I'm doing the best I can. I could just have zero social media. Like, there's a world where you could do that.
Yeah.
But as a politician, it's kind of like weird,
I think
right?
for me, there's a difference between people that are acting in good faith and people that are acting in bad faith.
Yeah.
So to me, that's the line, right? If you're a constituent of mine, you're acting in good faith and you don't think I did something right or I did a good job or you point something out that we could do better or you point something out that needs improvement, I'm all game for that. Like
as long as they're respectful, you're saying.
As long as you're acting in good faith, as long as they truly are acting in good faith. Like if you resolve it, they acknowledge it, they appreciate it, right? There are just people that are haters, that are professional haters. Either they're getting paid. Is
that a big thing?
Oh, I believe it is.
And paid by who?
By people who don't like the decisions that you make. You talk about the,
interest groups.
Yeah, so, we make decisions.
Right.
We're running $1.5 billion company. That's right. We have 4,500 employees and 4 labor unions. We piss people off when we don't do what they want. Yeah. So, it doesn't cost them much to hurt us, hurt our reputation. So you take a lot of risks doing this job. It's you're very vulnerable. And I think that's why a lot of good people decide not to do it. And I think sometimes I wish the press would understand that if they're complicit in this, right, what they're doing in an effort to want to shine a light or create accountability is oftentimes, hurting good people. Yeah. And then other people see that and they're like, I don't want nothing to do with this. I'm not going to get involved in this. Look what they did to this guy. This guy's a good guy. I know this guy. I went to high school with him. I went to college with him. I went to law school with him. You know what I mean? I've known the guy for 20 years. A great guy. I'm not going to subject myself to this. Look what they're doing to him. So, it is what it is, man, and I'm blessed because I saw my dad serve. He came to this country at 12 years old with nothing. My mom came at 7 with nothing, right?
That's probably a big advantage. Like you've already seen how it's done. So you've kind of got those like mental reps.
It helps.
In a sense, right? Yeah.
It helps. And we're different people. We have different personalities, right? But it does, I think it helps for sure. Yeah. And he's a resource, he's someone that I can call and be like, yo, you know what I mean? Like if your father or your parent or
it's like if my dad was Tom Brady or something.
Exactly.
Or like any
what do you think about that? How do you diagnose this play? What's my read here? Whatever.
Watch tape or something. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Rob's a big crypto guy. This is the biggest crypto dude. He has a crypto podcast. You're the crypto king, right? I'm sure. I don't know if you want to like ask a question or something.
Go for it, man.
Man, I don't necessarily have a question like one particular in mind, but I'm curious, like, where do you see the landscape of crypto going and how does Miami fit into that landscape?
Good question. I think that in terms of revolutionary technology or where technology is going generally, crypto was the fad right before AI, which is the current fad, right? Right now in this AI fad. So AI is what crypto was, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's talking about crypto every day. Now everybody's talking about AI every day, right? What we tried to do was we tried to say, hey, if we're the David in this David and Goliath battle for market share of a technology sector, we need to get in on the ground on the new thing, right? The new thing was crypto. So we said, hey, we're going to go all in, right? And I did some things that were really basic, right? I took my salary in Bitcoin, put Satoshi's white paper on our website, stuff like that. And it got a lot of attention.
And what's his white paper? I'm unfamiliar with. The
white paper was how he explained the concept of Bitcoin. Basically, the white paper that explains how Bitcoin works, right? Okay. And so that all got a lot of news, and we got a reputation for being a very pro Bitcoin. The Bitcoin conference came to Miami, which was a massive conference, a lot of economic development, et cetera. And then, of course, I believe that obviously we all saw what happened, right, with some of these companies that have gone through issues. But a lot of it also, I think, has to do with the fact that there hasn't been adequate legislation and guardrails put into place so that people knew how to play by the rules. And I think that had those guardrails been in place, my hope is that those big players would have followed the rules, because they have a lot at stake. I mean, these are billion-dollar companies, right? I think Coinbase direct IPO'd for $80 billion. Yeah. Massive company. Binance is a massive global company. FTX was a massive company. So, if the rules were clear, you want to think that everybody would have played by the rules, but the rules were not really set. And so it's sort of that did not help the industry. I think that was a big failure on the part of us as a country and as a society. And then
people even likened it to like the cocaine cowboys. People say like, oh, the crypto cowboys.
It was a wild, wild west, right? It was a wild, wild west. And then
2020, that's crazy.
It was a wild, wild west. And then now AI has sort of supplanted it. And I think AI gave Silicon Valley a second life. We were taking a good amount of their market share in terms of venture capital dollars because of crypto. And, and by the way, and to answer your question about where I think crypto is going, I think crypto is going to be very useful when you talk about decentralized finance, right? Where people can invest small dollar increments in equity and debt. Like if you buy a building or if you build a building, right now, they're basically two capital sources. There's debt, right? Like you borrow money from a bank, and there's equity. People invest in the building. And those have different risk profiles and therefore have different returns. But if you're a senior citizen, for example, who's not wealthy, you can't put $1,000 in a 80-story tower and say, I want to buy $1,000 of that debt or $1,000 of that equity. So if you're being locked out of that wealth generation opportunity, right? So there's a democratizing opportunity for crypto to fractionalize ownership in debt and equity. You've got cross-border payments. Right now, if you send an international wire, it takes you sometimes days, when it could take seconds, right, through crypto. The blockchain is something that's important, and this is where NFTs come from. The reason why NFTs are interesting and why the blockchain is interesting is really for authentication.
For sure.
Right? So how do I know that is actually Sergio Ramos' signature? How do I know that is actually Neymar's signature? How do I know that is actually Messi's signature? I mean, were you guys there when they signed it?
No.
Right? No. Right? I wasn't even there I don't think I was there when they signed it. I was there when Neymar signed it, but I don't think I was there when Sergio or Messi signed it. Right. So how do I know?
Yeah.
But if that were an NFT, right, that was that had that had the blockchain, that was on the blockchain, you would know that was an authenticated, right? The authentication is really important. So then if I sell it or trade it, the person who gets it can also authenticate it, right? So so that's why that's important. And it's a digital asset, right? Like I think digital assets are going to become more and more prevalent. I think maybe in our lifetime we won't have cash dollars anymore. You know what I mean? I'm not a big fan of the central bank digital currency concept because I don't think people want the government to know. I mean, we pay taxes, right? But I don't think you want them to know how much money you have in your bank account or in your pocket.
So that gives the government access to everyone's bank account?
So they would argue that it doesn't, right?
Okay.
Like, if you ask them, they're not gonna say, oh yeah. But
so they're being shady about it.
It's if the central bank creates a digital currency, right?
And it's not decentralized.
Right. And they have some control over, right? So I'm sure they'll try to convince people that they don't.
Right.
I'm not sure.
And I know you have to be very careful about this, but are there any like certain protocols you keep an eye out on, or that?
Yeah, I don't talk about that anymore because I get in trouble because if I say something, someone say, "Oh, you're trying to move a market, or you're trying to give investment advice," which I'm not. No, I would just tell you do your due diligence. Even sometimes when you do your due diligence, it's not enough. Sure. Definitely do your due diligence. if it's too complicated, or if someone who's explaining it to you can't really explain it well, I would say like that's a red flag. You know, yeah.
So I heard also that you're going to bring Elon to build underwater highways. Is that accurate?
I mean, I'd love to. Look, I think transportation is one of the areas in city building and ecosystem building that is most being disrupted. And it's being disrupted in a variety of ways, right? It's being disrupted through what I call micromobility, which is like scooters and stuff like that, where you can go a mile, 2 miles, 3 miles with one of these things, which are electric and don't really create congestion. You've got what I call 15-minute walkable cities, where basically cities are being planned. Like now you have Wynwood and the Design District, and you have Coconut Grove. You have all these places, right? Where everything that you do, where you live, where you work, and where you enjoy yourself is all within a 10-minute walkable radius. So you don't have to get in a car. You obviously have remote work, right? Which is meaning that you don't even have to leave your house, right, to be able to work. And I think that creates less stress on our road system. And then the last bucket I would say is just truly innovative transportation mobility, right? And I think at scale. And I think
like Boring Company.
Boring Company is one of them. Urban air mobility is another one, right? Like the concept where you can
flying
have
cars.
Basically, yeah.
And is Boring Company, because Florida's like geography is different with like a lot of limestone and like that kind of, is that possible here?
So I think they're doing some geological testing now, and I think there are, my guess is they're doing some of that stress testing now. My guess is that
they're trying to figure it out.
Right. And my guess is, look, if you're Elon Musk, you're the richest guy in the world, like
we trust Elon.
You will figure it out. Right?
We should have gotten Elon down here over Austin.
We're working on it, man. What makes you think I'm not? Yeah, man. Listen,
you think he'll
There's
move?
some alpha.
Yeah, come on, man. I don't know. I mean, look. He has multiple companies, right? So he's got obviously SpaceX, Tesla, and X, among others. Neuralink.
They just put one in a human yesterday.
Incredible. 2 days ago. Yeah. So I think the one I would like to see come is X, right? I like to see, or Twitter, or whatever you call it. I like to see that one come, because I think the concept of free speech is one that we really care about and value here in the city. Yeah. It's part of our DNA.
It's a big Miami principle.
It is, and we don't always agree. Yeah. And I think that would be cool. It'd be nice to. I'd love to get a couple more what I call tech anchor tenants, right? So we got a lot on the finance side, a ton on the finance side. That, trillions of dollars and assets under managed companies opening up offices here, thousands of jobs, high paying jobs. But we love to see that on the tech side, and we've seen some of it on the tech side. I do think the AI sort of revolution, if you will, stemmed the tide a little bit, and the crypto stuff,
for sure,
like the combination of those two things.
Absolutely.
So you talked to him about it? You think that's possible?
I've talked to him about the Boring Company. I've talked to him obviously about the possibility of locating the Boring Company's headquarters here.
That'd be sick.
And I think that would be, we'd have to do a project, right? Like we're still in the preliminary phases of it.
So like all these celebrities, when they're thinking about moving here, like so many people since COVID especially, like, are you ever picking up the phone? Like, cause I see all these jerseys, Magic Johnson, Messi. I mean, Messi was with the team, but are you ever like picking up the phone and like trying to get dudes like, hey, no taxes, XYZ, we got you a crib.
I'm always, I don't know, we got you a crib, but
not that you bought it, but
they wouldn't live in whatever crib I got them anyways. They don't want their own crib. I'm always pitching Miami. I'm somebody was telling me last night, he's like, you're like the chief marketing officer. I'm like, well, I'm the chief executive officer, CEO, not the CMO. But I am, as part of my role, I actually think I'm broader than a CEO. CEO is like running the corporation. I consider myself the CEO, but a different E. I think I'm the chief ecosystem officer, because ecosystem is more than just the company, right? The company's running well, right? We have good surpluses, low taxes, right? Low homicide, right? So all those metrics are good. For me, I'm thinking about the ecosystem. How are people, are they enjoying our parks? Are they enjoying our cultural facilities? You know what I'm saying? Are they able to play sports, or do they have access to sports at a low cost? That's the ecosystem, right? That's where you get happiness. Right? How are people happy? Well, they're happy when they're investing their most precious asset, which is their time, in an endeavor that they enjoy. That's what makes them happy. So that's how I look at it. And so in terms of like those people, I think it's not a mistake that we focus on quality of life, we focus on happiness, and we focus on what I call ROT, return on time, and you've got Messi, Tom Brady, Jeff Bezos, Ken Griffin, all these guys moving, right? And when you look at Messi, he turned down $250 million from Saudi to come live here. So I mean, I think we've got a pretty good formula. Oh yeah. If we're succeeding in convincing those guys.
Speaking of this ecosystem, I'm curious because I've been seeing a lot of content creators. You guys know which ones I'm talking about, especially near the Brickell area. What incentives are there for content creators?
The weather, man. That's the incentive. Look at that. You got the mayor on your podcast. Was it? No, look, I think it's interesting. People often ask me about incentives, and I'll be honest with you, we're not big into incentives because a lot of it is our value prop is obviously what I just talked about. I spent a lot of time talking about it, but also when you think about the SALT deduction going away. I don't know where you guys are from originally, but in New York, you got to pay an extra 13% in taxes. In Illinois, you got to pay an extra, 12 or 13% taxes. In California, the same thing. So the incentive is saving 13% in taxes, right? So like your dollar, you literally are either paying, if you're in the highest tax bracket, you're paying 37% in taxes, right? If you're in one of those cities, you're paying 50%. Wow. 50, half. So the government is your partner, your business partner, right? So for every dollar you earn, you're giving your partner who you don't get any rights, you got very limited rights to manage.
So that's why we're getting all the OnlyFans girls.
Exactly. Those are the content creators I'm talking about.
It's the capital of the world.
I've been married for 16 years happily. So I'm not going to comment on any girls.
They're making a lot of money.
It's content, man. It's content.
Listen, like you said, social media, can be a good thing and a bad thing, and it's very persuasive. So, but that's what I want to ask you. So, kind of going off subject a little bit. I know you said you try to, get away from being a politician and social media. What are some things you do in Miami to kind of help get your mind off of being a politician and kind of get you back to being Mayor Suarez, like the confident guy you are?
Yeah, well, I like to exercise a lot. Okay. I even do.
You can tell.
Yeah.
He's jacked.
I even do something called Fitness Fridays.
Okay. Can we pull up?
What's that?
Can we pull up?
Yeah, anytime. Absolutely.
I'll get a workout in.
Let's do it. As a matter of fact, I think I'm doing it tomorrow, so maybe we just do it tomorrow. If you guys want to come by tomorrow.
I'm an auditor, so right now is the busiest time of the year for me.
But it's from 8 to 9. Okay. So I do it from 8 to 9. I actually had the Nelk Boys there a couple times. And I've had a couple of interesting people come by, drop in. So yeah, anytime you guys want to drop in, for sure. In my house. I do it in my house usually. Yeah. And we do it at gyms too. Like local gyms will say, like, they watch it and they're like, hey, why don't you come by our gym? So we've done it at a few of the gyms in Miami because we want to promote the local businesses. So I do that. I love the water. I'm a big water guy. Okay. So I love the water. I love like scuba diving,
big boat,
fishing and that kind of stuff. Diving. Big on that. And that's it. And then I love to spend time with my kids. I mean, love being a dad. You guys I don't know if you guys have kids yet, but
no,
hopefully not soon. I probably will be the first one of the group.
It's rewarding, you get to see, you kind of replay your life, it's kind of weird. You replay your life. And so, and I think what happens is when you're in a relatively high profile position and with a lot of intensity, a lot of scrutiny, I think in some ways, and I think certainly I'm not saying, I don't, well, you see a lot of this with celebrities, right? I'm not a celebrity, but you see a lot of this with celebrities, which is that they're very insular. Like they don't go out a lot. They don't do a lot of things. And I think, there's a piece of that because, everybody's watching, everybody's always, anything you do, people are critical of it. So, everybody has a phone. So I don't know why they're not recording the aliens if they're there, So it's like, so I think a lot of it is you kind of like say, hey man, you know what? I'm going to focus on my family. I'm going to focus on my friends. I like that. I'm kind of a homebody. I go out very, very rarely. But yeah, so I do that and
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty good regimen. So, but
try to be disciplined.
But one thing you didn't mention was food. I'm a big foodie, so I want to know. And so I'm not from here. I'm from North Carolina, so I came down here to go to school and stuff. So, what's your favorite food spots? And people can come and
see. I don't want to do that either because I'm upset somebody. But I'll tell you sort of like how right now I've done every diet in the world, like all the diets imaginable, everything you name it, I've done it.
Carnivore diet.
What's that?
Carnivore diet.
Yeah.
Really?
I've done everything.
How was that?
I've gone carnivore diet and I've done vegan.
Really?
Yeah, I've done them all.
Which one did you like better?
Carnivore for sure.
You felt better?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
I think that's the move.
Vegan, I felt terrible, looked terrible.
Really?
Yeah, and I did it for a while too. So
Now you're gonna have some vegans call you.
I'm just saying it's me. I'm not saying y'all. I'm saying it's me.
The next Miami Herald.
No, yeah. So for me, I usually kind of fast in the morning. Now lately, I've been, I used to be a breakfast guy. I'm like not having breakfast. I have lunch, and then I'm able to have a nice dinner with whatever. If I can have like a beer, or wine, whatever, and that's it. You know what I mean? So I'm able to like enjoy myself, right? And then I work out, so that kind of keeps me in line.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we'll wrap it up. I know you got to head out, but thank you for making the time.
Oh,
That was awesome.
Thank you. Fun, man.
Maybe we'll see you
Enjoyed
maybe we'll see you at the lift.
Do it. Let's do it, man. I'm serious.
What's tomorrow's regiment? Arms? Friday?
I don't know.
Flex Friday?
Flex Friday. I don't know. We'll see.
All right, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we kind of make it up as we go.
Okay.
I like to do what I do like to do is kind of what I call limited equipment type stuff because I'm trying to do it. It's a challenge, right? Like I'm trying to challenge my residents to do it, to be fit. And so we'll do stuff that maybe they can do at home, right?
Like body weight stuff, bands. Maybe.
Sometimes it'll be body weight, sometimes it'll be bands. Sometimes we'll even use like chairs and stuff, like whatever. And then, and we usually scale it. So if I'm doing something, I will scale it so people can,
Okay. So we'll do your workout and then you come with us football workout with our guys.
Absolutely.
We got you on the field, throw some routes.
Let's go.
You run routes?
Of course.
Ooh, athlete.
Out there.
I played basketball in high school. My school didn't have a football team when I was coming up, but I would have liked to play football. It would have been fun.
But then you got to go one-on-one. He's the backer. He's got to bring you down.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
You think
I
you'll
like
get
me
around
every
him up
time.
the
I
field?
like me over time.
I don't think so. I don't think I can get around him. He's a lot younger than I am. Seems like he's in a lot better shape. So I'm huffing and puffing.
Yeah. All right. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks
a lot. I appreciate you too.